Welcome, readers. Today on Book Chat, we are discussing Bridgerton Season 1, the Shondaland original series featured on Netflix. We're also comparing the show to its source material, the book, The Duke and I. Stay tuned. Today's episode is sponsored in part by audiobooks.com. Audiobooks.com now has 175,000 titles and 1.2 million podcasts. New customers get 3 free audiobooks comprised of 1 premium credit and 2 VIP titles. Use our promo code Shelf Addiction, spelled as one word, when you sign up at audiobooks.com. Again, our promo code is Shelf Addiction. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and welcome to Book Chat here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. Participate in this discussion by joining the Facebook group Shelf Addiction Official. I hope to hear your thoughts on this discussion. As always, you can find the 3 of us on Twitter and Instagram. The links for everything are below in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please support this podcast by sharing it with some book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. That would really help me out, and I appreciate you for doing so. The uncut video version of this podcast is available now on Patreon. Join us there for exclusive videos, including this podcast after show. We get even more candid with what we have to say. So if you're interested in that at all, you'll need to come on over to Patreon and sign up. Before we get started, I have to issue a spoiler warning, so nothing is off limits. You've been warned. Welcome back to another discussion, and today we are talking about The Duke and I versus Bridgerton. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun. Joining me are my co-hosts, Casey and Nicola. Welcome back, ladies.
Hello.
Hey. So for this, we thought, let's just do the thing because Shondaland, yes. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, okay, we're going to read the book and then we're going to watch the show. And that's what we did.
Yep.
All right. Where should we start? Should we start with the book? Should we just like hodgepodge mash it all together? I don't know.
I think it's going to be hard to just talk about one thing and then just talk about the other thing. Yeah. So I'm up for the hodgepodge.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, let me just say, to kick things off, and this may be an unpopular opinion. I am known to have those, but I didn't really like the book. I mean, it was meh. It was fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was fine. That's how I thought about the book.
I was actually surprised that you were interested in it, Tamara. I think this is the only Regency I've ever known you to jump on. Like, pure romance is not usually your bag. You're more like if it's got to have some kind of paranormal, some kind of suspense, some kind of magic.
Well, I have watched, for example, I have watched a lot of British, things like, I like Downton Abbey. But that's not as old as this, obviously. I like stuff about Henry VIII. I watched those shows. No, I haven't necessarily read them, although I did read the one book that they turned into a movie based on Henry VIII by Philippa Gregory. I did read that, but that was like 15 years ago. So I think this is maybe the second or third book that I've read that far back with this kind of tone. So every once in a blue moon, I can pull one out.
Right. Well, I mean, the Philippa Gregory stuff is not very cheerful.
No, it wasn't. It was definitely.
I mean, Henry VIII killed all his wives, so it's sort of anti-romance.
Oh well, maybe that's why I liked it. There's intrigue and sex and murder, kill. So it's fine.
If you're only listening, seeing Tamara's face right now.
What can I say? So yeah, this was different for me. And I'm surprised that I didn't hate it, but I'm not surprised that I didn't love it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing the elephant in the room on the book is the issue of consent, right? There's a scene where Daphne figures out that when Simon says that he can't have children, he's not referring to a physical problem. He's referring to a preference or a vow.
Personal choice.
A personal choice. Yeah. And she goes about to sort of circumvent that and try to get pregnant anyway. If you flipped that around gender-wise, it would actually be entirely appropriate from a historical perspective. It would be. You cannot.
They did do that.
Fine,
you
fine.
can't refuse your husband.
You can't. Not only can you not refuse your husband, but to try to not get pregnant would be an actual crime. And I'm not sure it isn't for a man. Like that would be grounds for annulment in those days. So just from a contextual point of view, not exactly inappropriate. From a modern take on consent and, it bothered a lot of people.
Me, I hated it.
Now,
I knew you would.
And the funny thing is, I'm kind of like more in the middle. I think that was wrong that she did that. But I'm kind of like, well, damn, it's not like you shoved her off and you could have. You're strong enough. She could not overpower you. Shove her ass off if you really don't want to. But he didn't even do it. And then he felt bad because he was like, damn it, you tricked me. How dare you? But he really...
Well, in the book, he was drunk. So
yeah, in the book, he was smart. Yeah.
In the show, he was not.
But he wasn't that drunk. First off, you're able to get it up. You're able to come to completion. And you still figured out what she was doing after. Yes, but okay.
Yeah. So I liked that change. In the show, he was not impaired.
Yes, which is what I mentioned off air. I said the show softened it a little bit. Yeah. I think that softened it because he was fully aware.
Right. And it would be more of a deal breaker for me if it didn't turn out to be part of the central conflict. I mean, she didn't write it in there and then ignore that it was a bad thing. She wrote it in there and it almost destroyed their marriage, So
no, because he said he only left because he was stuttering. When he comes in the book, when he comes back, she said, I thought you left because you hated me for what I did. And he goes, no, I was upset because I was stuttering and you made me so emotional and I couldn't deal with that. And so there was no apology. There was no remorse on her part. Like there was just, oh, you left because you stuttered. Okay, let's go make some babies now. And then they did. Like there was no real remorse. There was no real acknowledgement that it was wrong what she did. She shouldn't have done it. She didn't even apologize. Like there was no, I'm sorry, I'll never do this again. I shouldn't have done that in the first place.
That's true. That's true. There was
going to be an apology in the show, but it was almost worse in the show because she blamed him. And she's like, we're going to go our separate ways because he can't forgive me, but I'm not going to say sorry. Like, no.
Okay, so this is a perfect example of two wrongs don't make a right. Okay.
Yeah.
So he clearly lied to her, a lie of omission, right? Mm-hmm. He lied.
Yes.
And he took advantage of her innocence. That was a big thing in both the book and the show, is that she knew nothing about sex and how things worked and how one got pregnant and how babies were made. And he took advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. So he used slick wording with her making assumptions to do what he wanted to do instead of just being honest about it. So he owed her an apology and she owed him an apology for taking things into her own hands, so to speak, when they had not had an agreement on what they were going to do at that point.
Yes.
So is one heavier than the other in 1800s? I'm not so sure. I don't know.
I think here's the thing, though. Having an agreement about it would be so absurd in the context of the times. Mm-hmm. I mean, and this is why Anthony was trying to prevent the marriage, right? He knew what was going on. He knew what was up.
I think he knew.
He didn't know about the kids, but he knew he never wanted to get married.
Yeah.
He knew that for sure that he was a rake and did not want marriage. And she would, he felt that Yeah, I felt like he felt that he was a rake. He was going to do what rakes do, and he didn't deserve to be with her, and he didn't want to get married. I don't necessarily know that he didn't want children.
Yeah, I don't think the kids thing was there. It was definitely I've known him my entire life since we were kids at school, and he never wanted to get married ever.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
Yeah, and they really, as far as Simon's character, in the book, the stuttering, the impairment, was a big part of the story. It was a big motivation for him doing the things that he was doing and not saying. Like, he developed a reputation because he chose not to talk a lot, but it turned out to work to his benefit instead of, he's mute. He just picked his words carefully.
It just made him more cold and remote.
Right. And in the show, they barely addressed it. Like, it was in a letter. Like, basically, she figured out by reading his letters that he had an issue.
There were scenes in the show with him and Lady Danbury, right?
Yes.
You started his childhood.
To me, it was like down on the list of plot devices. It was down on the list. It was not a primary thing.
I think it was there, but it was harder to. I mean, it's harder to put on the screen than the page because it's an omission, right? So the thing that did not come out in the show that came out in the book was the way this reputation for being cold and aloof evolved, right? They could have had a flashback with him and Anthony at school. And showed a little bit about how he said so little. There was one scene where I can't remember what the question was, but there was some kind of lead up and Simon's response to something complicated was just no. And that was like everybody was like, whoa.
You're like, beast, he told him. Ooh.
And I can't remember what the scene was or what the situation was, but it was obvious that it was because of his stuttering, but everyone took it a different way.
And so that
would have been a good thing to include, I think. I mean, the show was simplified, as shows frequently are, but you're right. I think the stuttering got lost in the translation.
Yeah, and I think that they tried to show it a little bit by him showing more facial expressions than talking all the time, which I did notice early on. I'm like, he looks like he wants to say something, but he's not saying it. Like, that scene at the dinner table, he's kind of just looking and making faces until the mother speaks to him directly, like, oh, sorry, we're so, running our mouths, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, they have that conversation. But I'm like,
I thought he was an ass at that dinner, and he was not in the book, and she was too. Daphne and he were insulting each other, and that was not in the book at all. I was like, where is this coming from? This is weird.
They wanted tension and drama in the show.
That wasn't what happened. I don't know. I didn't like that scene. Was like, I don't know if they were still trying to get a feel for the characters at that point or what, but I didn't understand why they made some character changes, particularly to Daphne, that I don't understand. I think that I liked the show. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was beautiful. And I enjoyed it a lot. But some of the changes that they made, the biggest one that really puzzled me was, in the books, the reason that Daphne is having trouble finding a suitor is that she is always in the friend zone. She's everybody's little sister. She's got these 3 older brothers who protect her and who sort of jolly along with her, and like all of the eligible males just see her as a non-sexual, as a little sister. So I really don't understand why they changed that to be, oh, she's society's most beautiful diamond of the first water. And yet that's also why she can't get anyone to be interested in her. That made no sense. Like having the queen, they put a little thing in there, like having the queen select her out of all of the debutantes would normally have all of the suitors beating down her door. Right. But they made some little throwaway comment from one of the women, like, now you're everybody's enemy, right? And so somehow that meant she didn't have any suitors, and that made no sense. So I don't understand why they changed that, because I don't think they needed to, and I don't think it really worked. I mean, it's a small thing.
That's the only way they could make it so that the queen's nephew could come along and try to court her. Because if she was a nobody who didn't have any recognition, a prince wouldn't be looking at her.
That's true. I mean, that's another addition to the series that that wasn't in the books. I mean, actually, everything that had to do with the queen was not in the books. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
See, I don't honestly. Okay, so I'm just gonna put it out there. I thought the show was better than the books.
Okay.
Well, and with that, I can tell that they have incorporated a lot of future books into this initial story to get us interested in more, siblings, and there are multiple things going on at once versus just one story, one relationship happening. They're showing bits and pieces of the other siblings, which may or may not exactly tie into those books. I don't know, because I did not read them. So I don't know if the one brother was sleeping with the opera singer and the other brother wanted to be with the shop owner. Those could be totally made up and not in the books at all. But I got to tell you, after watching this show, it's a likelihood that I'll watch season 2. But it's not likely that I will read the other books. I read them all a long time ago. I will reread them, but I also was not expecting to have that much content from future books woven into this season. So I will be totally honest. I am a Julia Quinn fan, but I have been sort of off historicals for the last while, like 7-8 years. I read a few here and there, but I don't read them the way I used to. And I don't really retain a lot of details from these books that I read. So I read them and then I close the covers and I go on and I read another one. So I don't really remember all the details from all these books. And I don't know if they track or not, because I only reread the first one. So I probably will. I didn't want to reread them all, and then it's going to be 8 years before we get to the last one, right? So, I really liked them, but I did not love them enough to reread them every year, the whole series. I'm not going to do that. So that's where I'm landing on that. I was pleased about it. It reminded me a lot of, you can really see Shonda's sort of Grey's Anatomy chops here, where, I think of some of these ongoing series. I used to watch a soap opera back in the 80s and 90s, right? And you could really, when you start it, you can really see how they have these multiple storylines and they're building up so that they all sort of peak at a different place. So while one story is coming to a big dramatic conclusion, there's another one that's just kind of getting started, and there's another one that's, adding a couple layers on, but they kind of stay out of each other's way. And but by the time you get ready for like big drama number 2, you're kind of in that lull after the big drama number 1, right? So which is how I enjoy it. I think that if they had followed this book and left all of those other characters on the sidelines, it would have been so boring.
It would have been so boring. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been 8 hours long.
No.
Maybe if it had been like an hour and a half Pride and Prejudice style movie, like just focusing on them, maybe it would have worked. But no, not for an 8 episode or 8 hour TV show.
Clearly the way that she has boarded out or plotted out these seasons, she is anticipating several seasons, maybe even 8, since there's 8 books. God. Maybe. It's possible she could try to but Netflix does not renew things that long. And I read an article that kind of explains why Netflix doesn't do that, and it's all money, because the more popular and the longer it goes, the more they have to pay these actors. So they usually stop before 3-4 seasons. 5 is a stretch. So maybe Shonda Woodland is just planning for as many as they can get. Hence, let's throw a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And that made it interesting to me because for me, the show was a slow start. The first 2 episodes, I was kind of like, okay, I see potential, but when is it going to get going? And I think episode 3, was the one that kind of pushed the button for me to be like, okay, yeah, I'm invested now. I'm going to keep watching.
Well, Regency romance historically, they got into the series situation very early. So like back in the 90s is when you started seeing these family groups, or there was a blogger back in the day that called them dude bro groups, I think, that made me laugh. So they're fellow soldiers who are back from the Napoleonic Wars, or they're a family group, or they're schoolmates, or there's some thread that holds together a group of usually men for whatever reason, or women, but there isn't a series arc that requires you to read them in a specific order. So you can read the Julie Quinn Bridgerton books completely out of order if you want to. You'll see the couples from the previous books show up with a baby or show up at a croquet game, and there's some banter, but you don't miss any of the plot points if you read them completely out of order.
Okay, that's good to know. Although I won't be reading them.
For any fans of the books or of reading out there of Regency that have not read the books, you probably know this to be true anyway. But yeah, you can read them out of order.
Okay. So I did want to, since we already brought up like all the cross stories and stuff. So is it just me or the 2 older brothers, Benedict and Anthony? I thought they were interchangeable. I'm like, they are so forgettable. Those 2 actors, they're interchangeable. For a minute, I was like, wait, I thought that other brother was with her. And I'm like, oh, wait, they just look similar. I
was having the same problem. I think it took me like 5 episodes to finally figure out the 3 brothers, because Colin kept confusing me too. I'm like,
really? Colin's the only one that stood out to me because he was much younger.
Colin stands out because he's got that ridiculous poof of hair.
Yeah.
Like I had trouble with that.
Yeah, like that's Colin in our screenshot on the video.
Yeah. I didn't have trouble telling them apart. I guess I just think of them as,
they sound the same.
I just think of them as sort of background characters for this book, so they don't have to be different right yet.
I mean, I could tell them apart in the book, obviously, because they were always named, but in the show, they'd be walking or talking, or they would just appear, and I'd be like, who's this? Who are we watching?
You could tell it was Anthony because he's trying to boss everybody around.
Well, I mean, outside of those scenes, like when Anthony was with the opera girl, I was like, oh, is this Benedict or Anthony? I would confuse them when they were with their girls. Okay. And then I was like, okay, I got it straight now. Benedict likes the shop girl, who is lying to him, by the way. She's not French. Apparently, we find out. And, and then Anthony likes the girl who is like, I'm making my bank. Get out of my face. I'm making my money. And he's like,
you're not taking care of me, so I'm taking care of me.
Yeah. Like, I'll need you.
Yeah, I don't know.
To her, he was a total dick, and he flip-flopped a lot.
Yeah.
He flip-flopped a lot.
Yep. So. And I should I spoiler anything a little? No, I won't spoiler. Spoil. I don't believe he ends up with her, with the opera singer.
Okay.
So, which I would have liked better, I think. So maybe they'll completely change his story. I don't know. But, he was not a likable character in this season at all. He was dictatorial. More so, I mean, the books he wasn't. In the book she had turned down like 3 or 4 proposals, and he was like, that's fine, you should marry for love.
Yeah. He was more likable in the book for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
he rejected Nigel several times in the book for her.
Yeah, I mean, that whole subplot was weird. I don't think that I don't know, that subplot with the was it Nigel that wanted to marry her and turned into a giant ass about it. And then they started that whisper campaign to destroy him, which I kind of enjoyed that as a plot point. I don't know how realistic it was, but I don't know. Again, that was one of those things that they did in the series that seemed almost like filler, like it didn't really need to be there. But maybe that's because it wasn't in the book. They used it
more so for Lady
Featherington?
No. The
Danbury.
Gossip Columnist.
Oh, Featherdown. Whistledown.
Whistledown. Yeah, I thought that was more to show her power necessarily than anything for the characters and Daphne and all of that. Because like you said, the Whisper campaign, they're like, we're going to be women and we're going to do what we have to do. And of course,
we'll take care of it since you're not, asshole. You're not going to take care of it. We will.
Man, we're going to take care of this. And like, it was the expose and he ran away because of the expose. And I think that was just trying to set up how important the gossip column was and how it would affect, the later things when she was found in the garden with Simon. And they're like, oh shit, if this gets out, she will definitely be ruined forever because we'll get in the gossip column.
Yeah, I guess I didn't get that out of it. That does make sense. What I took away from it is that, women have had power in that time too, but it was a different kind. It was indirect power. And I'm not sure that I really believe it. So.
Well, honestly, you have to suspend disbelief in Shondaland because she writes a whole bunch of junk. You be like, what? Get out of here. Get out of here. But
see if anybody comes back to life.
Right.
Isn't she famous? Isn't Grey's Anatomy famous for having characters sort of come back to life? I forget. I don't know. I stopped watching years ago.
No, but dead people do come back, like in dreams and things like that.
Okay.
So, but
yeah.
But yeah, I do. I love it. I'm down for the drama. The more drama she added to Bridgerton. Thank you, Lord have mercy. I'm already trying to change the name. More drama she's added, the more I enjoyed it. When the drama was low, when we were meeting people and getting introduced, I was like, oh, what else? Where's my wine? But when the drama started kicking in, I'm like, okay, I'm about it. Where's the drama? So I like the Whisper campaign. I like, just because it upped the ante for the drama a little bit.
I liked the whole Fatherington subplot like that. I don't remember that from the books at all with the boxer and the father dying and the mother. The mother was always plotting, but she was like harmless in the books, right? She was just kind of, she had these unfortunate daughters and they were not attractive and they were not dressed attractively, and which has got its own sort of problems in a more modern view of who gets to have a romance and who doesn't. But she was painted as just kind of a ridiculous character, not a dimensional one. So
the pregnant house guest was also a new character.
Yeah. So interestingly, she was not a completely new character. There's a future book where how do I put this? She was an off-page character. She was part of somebody's backstory. So, and I only know that because someone reminded me. I didn't remember that. But she does show up again in future books, or she shows up for the first time in books and as part of somebody's backstory. So I thought that was an interesting way to tie those things together and start laying some seeds for future books. So there's a lot more sequel baiting in this season than there was in the books. We've already kind of talked about that. Books often do a bunch of sequel baiting, right? But
this one.
in this series, it was mostly just the existence of all these siblings. You're like, okay, there's going to be a bunch of books, right?
Oh my gosh.
but you didn't really see how any of it was going to come together.
So Mrs. Fatherington, is that her name? She was the worst in the show. I'm like, this witch is a witch. Like, what is wrong with her? Like, she treat her kids like crap. She treat the house guests like crap.
Mm-hmm.
She treat her husband like crap. I mean, my God, she is intolerable. I'm like, I don't even know. Well, no one even barely liked her, seemed like either.
Well, see, she's the embodiment of a society lady, right? The only thing she cares about is the opinion of society and getting her daughters married off. And that would be fine if she were having any kind of success at it. But her daughters are flopping on the marriage market. Her taste is terrible, right? She forces her daughters into these ugly dresses, and they're unflattering. And, you know, you start seeing like Penelope's rebellion a little bit. And Penelope in the book is sort of the only dimensional character in that family. But yeah, I got nothing there. I liked that there was more, I'll say, depth to her, in that she was even more terrible in the show than she was in the book. She was less ridiculous and more determined.
Mm-hmm.
And you see sort of the depths that she'll go to get what she wants, or what she thinks she needs to do to keep her place and her daughter's place. So I didn't hate her exactly, but she's definitely a little bit of a foil to Violet Bridgerton, who comes from a place of love with everything she does for her children, right? Mm-hmm. She's a little bit goofy on the topic of preparing her daughters for marriage, but
I don't know. I mean,
but other than that, so they're both good.
Okay, they both have issues as parents. Let's just say that one is different from the other. But Mrs. Fatherington, I mean, she treats her children not cool. She lets the other sisters call Penelope fat, basically. They're making fun of the girl for being fat, weighing too many stones, or whatever the hell they called it. I couldn't get with the fat shaming. I didn't like it. I was like, okay, I guess they had to just throw that in there. And I gotta admit, so spoiler, guys, I knew it was one of the Feathering sisters. I didn't know which one, but I knew from the beginning. I'm like, it's somebody in that family. It's one of them sisters. They always around. I knew it. Like early on, I knew it. But that's all I'm going to say. We get to the rest of that later. But I knew. I was like, oh, it's from that family.
I was a little surprised that they did the reveal this early. So it definitely was not in the books this early. I'm not sure they ever reveal it in the book. They must reveal it in Penelope's
I think they do
book.
it in like book 4 or book 5. I haven't read them.
It must be in Penelope's book. So,
well, I think what they were avoiding was a Gossip Girl. So, you know, people compare this show to Gossip Girl because of,
right.
You know,
I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
I love Gossip Girl. It's so freaking good. And by the way, HBO is making a new version. By the way, it comes out this year, so I'll be watching that. But anyway, the Gossip Girl problem was at the end of 5 or 6 seasons, we figure out who Gossip Girl is, and everybody was like, boo, that's bullshit. Like, why would it, you know, everyone hated who Gossip Girl really was. And it was like, oh, this is some bull. So I think that they were like, let's just get it out the way. Then we can play around with it in a different way instead of extending this huge reveal and then people be pissed off. So I think
there's something like, I don't know what the actual deal is, but I think that there's 3 seasons pretty well locked in, but after that, who knows? So I think they probably needed to get that arc underway just in case they don't get a renewal.
Well, yeah, definitely. We know they got a season 2 renewal, but there's no dates out there anywhere as of now. So it could be 2022, maybe, when we see season 2 of this.
Yeah, especially with COVID slowing down production.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the show. I mean, there's a lot to talk about in that show versus the book, which is very blah. But
I thought the book was cute. Very...
Was it?
And candy cute.
Cute?
It was just so sweet and nothing bad ever really happened other than marital rape, but...
You're like, just a little marital rape.
It's a little marital rape.
The book is pretty low conflict, right? It's very British stiff upper lip sort of conflict. So the only conflict in the book was really about Simon coming to terms with his relationship with his father and letting go of that and being able to have a future and let himself be happy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like there was no drama at the duel. It was as silly as it could be. Like I didn't feel any sort of tension or drama when they were dueling in the book, but in the show, there's that music and there's the doctor and everything's just so intense.
And the gun goes off
everything's going to be terrible. Yeah. No, the book was just really, really cute and sweet and fluffy, and the show is not. The show is the opposite.
I don't know. I wouldn't call this book sweet at all. I don't know. I just think that my issues with Daphne as a character outweighed any cuteness that could have existed for the couple. And I actually didn't even really like Simon that much in the book. I just, I'm like, I felt bad for the kid, I'm like, I felt bad for him. Because, that's unfortunate you got treated like that. That sucks, your dad said you were dead, that sucks.
Pretty extreme.
Yes, extreme. But I still did not feel any sort of, I don't know. I just did not like Simon like that. He wasn't like, he not only is that sad, but he's also super fine and really sweet and really that. I didn't feel that for him at all. I just felt bad for him. Mm-hmm. But in the show, and I mean, it could be because, Regine Page is eye candy. Maybe I felt a little bit more sorry for him. I definitely was like, well, hello, I'll take him if you don't want him. But in the book, I just didn't feel like any of those feelings about that character, Simon, at all. I was like, sorry, you got the short end of the sticks. That sucks. But I didn't feel like, they're such a cute couple. And, I just didn't feel that for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I read a lot of historical romance, and this is definitely not the best I've ever read. And I don't know if I'll ever reread it, but it was very, very typical, very sweet, very low angst.
Which I like personally.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with any of that. There's just better books out there that I'll read instead.
Man, we all know the word angst and Nicola do not belong. They don't belong.
Maybe if there's a vampire.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Julia Quinn is pretty reliable. She's very. I think one of her famous quotes is that her books are not going to change your life, but she'd like it if they change your afternoon. Right? She's writing a feel good story that ends with a happy ending and everybody in love. And there's one of the things that I think the show could have done better or didn't do a great job was translating the banter on the page. Quinn has great dialogue, and I think it really makes the personalities of that's where the personalities come from, is in that dialogue. And I didn't see it in the TV show. But they changed Daphne's character so much that I don't know that, and maybe that's why, but she wasn't, in the book, she had this sort of sly outsider humor, and she'd, kind of talk about some of the people on the dance floor. She'd talk about the town in general, and she'd have this sort of intelligent, pragmatic take on what was going on. And I think Simon enjoyed that in the books, and they had a pretty good banter situation going on. But when they changed her to be like, instead of this outsider, they changed her to be like this, the princess of the society season, it didn't work anymore. Or it wouldn't have worked. So I missed that.
They tried to have that. There was one episode, I don't remember, it was fairly early on, with the two of them kind of bantering and talking about, we'll have to write a book, and chapter 6 will be fainting with your head down or whatever.
Yep.
They tried to do that in the show, and then it just ended right there. Like, they did it once, and then they're like, okay. This humor's not working anymore. We're moving on.
Yeah, I didn't get the vibe from the on-screen Daphne. So I did miss that about, I mean, when you talk about what do you like about the books, that is really the best thing, in my opinion, about the books, is the dialogue and the banter and the way she brings out the characters by the dialogue, which should make it a good candidate for screen, right? So there's not all this internal, well, there is, but anyway, that's something I've been thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I did like their banter in the books, especially after that little incident when they were trying to decide what to do with old boy's knocked out body.
That was hilarious.
A good scene.
That was
I
good.
love that scene.
She did punch him out in the TV show, but it wasn't as integral to her character in the show as it was in the books, right? In the book, she's the rough and tumble little sister. So some asshole comes after her, she knows what to do, right? Mm-hmm. That didn't make really any sense in the context of her character in the show, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then they didn't
hit the same way.
It didn't hit the same way, and they didn't follow it up the same way. It didn't have the same result. I mean,
it had that partners in crime feel in the book, and it could have been cool between Daphne and Simon. It had that partners in crime. So like, oh, we can't leave him here. Maybe we should put him in his car. Not the car, but the carriage. Oh, wait, no, he's knocked out now. We're not carrying him. We're not doing that. Like, what else can we do with him? It's like, no.
I will say in the book, in that scene, I did not understand why they didn't just walk away and leave him on the floor. Like, they had this
because
big long...
Daphne's so nice, and she wanted to be nice to him, and then she had to knock him out a second time, and she's like, okay, fine, we'll leave him now.
She's like, wait, but I thought you wanted to help me do. He's like, that was before you knocked him out, basically. I cannot do it. That was great. That was one of the best scenes. I think I liked that a lot.
It was.
Which is unfortunate that it didn't come to the screen in a similar way. It could have been fun to see.
No, it was part of that whole like weirdly threatening arc with Nigel. So
yeah. I mean, you win some, you lose some. That's the thing about when you make a TV show or a movie adaptation. Like, there are certain things that are wins. Like, I feel like the addition of some things were wins in this case. But sometimes you lose some stuff in getting the other. So
I just wanted to say, I loved watching this show. It was so beautiful. The sets, the flowers, the scenery, the costumes, the hairstyles. It was, I think the hairstyles were historically completely wrong, but they were so cool to look at. That's right. Yeah. So Georgian is when they had the huge Marie Antoinette dues, right? That was before like 1800, right? So anyway, I thought and I think that some of the articles have said that they're not bothering too much with being exactly historically accurate. So, but I did think they were just amazing to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the way it was shot. The costuming was really colorful and was pretty. The environments were pretty. I mean, they did a good job production-wise. The production value is high, very high. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it shows they had money and they had some talented people working on the set, which is always appreciated. It definitely ups the ante a little bit when watching something like this. You got things to look at. And look at the bright and shiny, the outfits, the hair, the good-looking men. We got some good value there for screen.
I will say, like, my age is showing here because, like, all pretty much all the heroes just look like little kids to me. Like, I like my heroes a little with a little more wear and tear on them. So.
Oh goodness! Well,
I mean, Simon was the best out of all of them. The three brothers could just kind of.
One thing I wish they would have changed, though, you guys, I wish they would have taken the opportunity. And of course, this almost feeds exactly into the opposite of what I was saying about what I like about high drama. But it would have been kind of refreshing to not have a toxic relationship as front and center, because it was toxic both ways in the show. Like, just like in the books, like, you know, like Daphne was kind of manipulating him and he was lying to her. And it was kind of like, it would have been nice to be like, oh, this is a, you know, maybe he still has his issues, but maybe, hey, he's an upstanding, upfront guy. And I don't know. I just think it would have been refreshing a little bit not to have like the toxicity of their relationship there. I mean, because I saw an article which compared these two to Edward and Bella. They compared like the male love interest toxicity of, I know everything. I know what's good for you. I'm going to tell you what to do. You know, all those things. It would have been refreshing not to have them. But I mean, how can you in this type? I don't know. It's hard. It's like hard to like put in your brain. Like, you don't want it, but how can you make that make sense in 18, whatever? I don't know.
Well, you can, but the central conflict here was around Simon's unwillingness to have children and his deception of her, and then her subsequent dealing with that, right? And that would not have worked if she knew anything about sex, right? So it all comes back to that.
I would have even liked, honestly, him being like, you may not know things, but I'll teach you things, and we gonna teach each other. You know,
I thought that was kind of implied when he was talking to her at the dance. And,
he was trying to. Or the one time they were talking, and he's like, "You don't touch yourself. What's the problem? Go home and do it. Go home and touch yourself, okay?" But I wanted like some more of that, so like she wouldn't at least understand how kids are made.
I don't think that was in the book.
No, that wasn't in the book, but I liked it on the show. I'm like, damn, what's happening right now? What is this conversation? But like,
there was a lot of sex in the show, and there's some in the book too, but and it's not closed door, but it's a lower percentage of scenes, I think.
Man, and that scene on the stairs, I'm like, damn. Like, what is this?
Wouldn't that hurt your back?
I always think that about the stairs scenes. That's a
marble.
So,
that would hurt, right?
Like, ow.
Probably. I'm thinking she's probably not thinking about the stairs digging into her back. If he's doing his job right, I'm sure the stairs don't feel that bad.
Well, she's got a full corset on. Maybe that's just like leaning a piece of wood.
She's rigid already, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't know. But I was sitting there like, whoa, okay, we're doing that. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, you know, I think people who come into it thinking it's going to be a Downton Abbey or a Pride and Prejudice maybe had some eyebrows going up into the hairline on this show. Like,
my eyebrows were going up. I'm like,
kids, go to your room now.
This is adult TV. You can't watch this. Get out.
Go do the dishes. Pause.
Turn the volume down.
Mute. Where's the mute button?
Yeah, the whole thing. I'm like, wow. So, but
I hit the mute button a few times. I got a teenager in my house. I'm not that worried about her seeing it, but her seeing it with me is a little awkward. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think like some of those scenes, I was kind of like, oh, it kind of shocked me at first to see it, like the stair scene. I was like, oh.
And then there was one where she was sitting on a freaking ladder or something.
Yes.
I think, like, what?
Yeah. Like, okay. Right. But, and I mean, oh boy, Anthony with the
oh yeah, that was the first. That was like early in the first scene up against the tree. They're like, "Where is Anthony?"
She like making all this noise, and they like going at it on the tree. The tree, Lord, look, all the typical things we talk shit about in the books: the stairs,
and the footman standing there with the horses with his back turned.
Oh my God! Like, where is he? Oh, he's indisposed. He's busy.
He's busy
doing things.
Doing Lord things.
Yeah. He's getting some fresh air outside.
That's right. He's riding, my Lord.
Right. Oh, Lord. So, yeah, there was some sex in there, and I didn't hate it. I was down for it. So they did have like also in addition to what was in the book, they had, the pregnant girl, that whole scene, like, oh my God, dude, like the scene where the girl goes and drinks the tea. I'm like, this dummy. I'm like, is she trying to kill herself or is she trying to abort the baby? I couldn't decide which one she was trying to do at first when she started making that tea. And then
it was confusing. And then she was like, oh, the baby's gone. Oh, right. The baby's not
but
gone.
I'm like, how do you think the baby's gone? Did something come out? How do you think the baby's gone? And then the doctor's like, you're an idiot. You think drinking some tea is going to work? Basically.
Yeah.
You are still pregnant. Oh my God. What an idiot. Like another girl, that woman that doesn't know anything about anything. Mm-hmm. It's like, why did you think you were not pregnant anymore? It's like, okay, girl. I can't with this dumb stuff, but drama, I guess.
Yeah. Drama. Intrigue.
I can't with the stupidity of the girls. Which was my biggest problem with Daphne. Like, you're so dumb. I can't do it.
I mean, that was kind of I don't know, another twist to the plot that was a little bit like filler to me. She could have just as easily accepted the brother when he first showed up, right? Reluctantly. She's like, okay, all right, this is how it's going to, I forget, why did she so with Colin, it was she got out of that, or he got out of that because of Lady Feathering or Lady Whistledown spilled the tea, so to speak.
Well, of course she did. She knew first. She tried to tell him.
Yeah.
He tried to tell him, but he was not listening. So she like, okay, gotta do what I gotta do.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did get, I mean, honestly, that's not fair to trick someone into marrying you and they not know you're pregnant. And the sad part about it is, like Colin said, he said, if you had told me, I would have married you anyway.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but.
Well, he's not an heir, right?
No.
He's the third son. So her child would be unlikely to, I mean, those are the things that were important in the times, right? So he's not going to inherit the Bridgerton title. So having a cuckoo in the nest, so to speak, wouldn't be as big of a problem as if he were, I mean, he's in line for it, right? If something happened to Anthony and Benedict, then he could. But and there's no genetic testing in those days. If the baby was born while you're married, it's
the baby daddy was white anyway, so he could have looked right. He or she could have fit right in. Honestly, like, let's keep it real. They wouldn't have known.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there were times when the husband didn't acknowledge a son or a child that was born within their marriage. So there, I guess there is some kind of, I don't know what's real historically. So people, I know what I've been reading Regencies for a long time. So I know what is like the norm for Regency. I don't know if that makes it historical fact or not.
I mean, even in this series, Benedict, when he went to go to that house and he's painting new women and he's hanging out with they got some crazy stuff going on in that house. But they're like, dude, you're the second brother. You can hang out.
It took me a minute to figure out what was going on with the pipes. I was like, pipes? Why are they smoking? Oh. Right. I don't know. I pictured opium smoking as looking a little different than like a tobacco-looking pipe. But
I mean, I guess you can put opium in anything, just like you could put weed in anything, technically. But even you guys, I have not smoked opium or weed. Okay, let me just put that out there. No judgment, though. But anyway. No, zero judgment. But you do you. Okay, like, I'm not mad. But, I think it was funny how, like, even, he got to do what he wanted to do because he wasn't the oldest brother. You got a little bit of flexibility. Yeah, you go after that shop girl. You can get it because guess what? You're not the oldest brother. It's fine. And your sister's marrying a duke. So you can really do what you want to do. No problem.
Well, it used to be very typical for the heroes in a romance to like be total fuckboys right up to the moment when they met the heroine, right? And I kind of took some of this like I wasn't sure where they were going with Anthony's girl, with the opera singer. Like I could absolutely see that becoming the heroine of his book. I don't think that's how it works out, but I don't remember for sure. So in romance, anything can happen, right? But often there's like these throwaway women with the heroes earlier in their stories. So,
I mean, honestly, it would pleasantly surprise me if they ended up together, because I'm like, isn't she a little, how should I put this delicately? She's not as pristine as some of the heroines. So,
are we talking about the shop girl or the opera singer?
No, the opera singer.
Sienna.
Yeah.
So I can feel like, while it's hot and passionate, I can't see them actually being together. Because come on, you're the oldest brother. You inherit all this stuff. You can't really have this chick walking around getting your people's money, can you? I mean, you can, but would you? Mm-hmm. Would the writer be so bold as to make that woman, his wife, without changing her, without making her change? Like in the show, they're like, this guy likes me for what I am. He's not trying to change me, make me wear some ball gown and go to some stilly ball.
Yeah, but she was into the idea when he brought it up. She was having those princess fantasies. I think that was what the look on her face meant to me. And then like her reality came to her and she's like, I can't do that.
Yeah, fantasy and reality collide. They don't get along, apparently, at least for that character anyway.
It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think that he ends up with someone else in the books, but I've read Regencies where the opera singer becomes the wife. So
and still being an opera singer, she's no longer is she the lady of the house now? She changes.
Well, yeah, okay, but opera singers have a limited shelf life, so.
I don't know anything about opera singers. Okay, so I guess. I mean, if you're an opera singer, you're not trying to catch a man for money. If you're not trying to catch anybody to take care of you, then that's what she was doing on the side. She had...
so in Regency, opera singers are like, the mistress is almost always an opera singer. Like, I don't know what's up with that, but that's a very common thing. So I don't know if the reverse is true, that opera singers are usually someone's mistress, but I think that's the common trope. Like, it's like almost a code thing. Like, oh, she's an opera singer.
Oh, see,
wink.
I'm thinking, why can't she be married and be an opera singer? She's not trying to catch no men. She's just trying to sing her songs. But this character is trying to catch some men and sing her songs. So,
well, yeah, being an opera singer, being on the stage in any way was considered very, it really puts you sort of beyond the pale from a society standpoint.
It's risque.
Yeah, what they called, so there's a few books out there that sort of focus on what they called the demi-monde, like the half world, and it was like the Benedict's parties, it would have the high class courtesans, it would have opera singers, it would have, it would be the party place. But it wasn't like poor people. It was still beautiful people. They just weren't acceptable in society people.
Okay.
That'd be fun to read.
There's a few, I have to look for some of them. Deborah Marvell. I can't remember the first name right now. Marvell was the last name. She wrote a lot about those.
Okay.
I'll check them out.
Let's see. Oh, did you guys notice Julie Andrews' voice?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She's got a very distinct voice. God. I loved it.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it too, but it was a little disconnected considering that the real Lady Whistledown is so young. So, and Julie Andrews is lovely, but you know, she does not have the voice of a 20-year-old.
No, that was on purpose. Like if she had a young voice, you'd be looking for a young person. But also, I think they imply on the paper, it has a feeling that she's older. So maybe she's writing like she's older. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure she's not doing those youthful, childish things when she's writing the paper.
Right.
So,
I was
like a character.
I was going to say, I thought that's how Penelope saw herself, as being like older and refined and having like that type of Julie Andrews poise. That's like she wants to have, because she's the youngest sister. She's always called fat. She's always made fun of. Nobody ever listens to her. So she has this voice that people listen to and respond to and love. And,
like her alter ego kind of thing.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it could be that, or it could just be much simpler. Like they're trying to just hide who it is. Because like,
I mean, there's like, probably that too.
And I mean, like, again, I just think of Gossip Girl because Kristen, what's her name? Kristen, whatever, was the Gossip Girl voice the entire time. And spoiler alert, this show's been off the air forever, so no one come for me. But the Gossip Girl was a man. It was a man. So it's like, what? But this whole time you have a female voice narrating as Gossip Girl. And then it's not a girl at all. So it's like, maybe it was just a disguise. Plain and simple. Okay. Maybe not.
No, that's very probable. Yeah. And also Julie Andrews. They had to have Julie Andrews in this.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's wonderful to see, you know, actresses of age getting juicy parts, right? And just having like the voiceover only, I think, makes it ideal for someone who might have some physical limitations, right? Not to mention this was all shot during COVID. Or was it? I don't know when they started shooting.
It ended right before COVID shut everything down.
Okay.
Like they ended right in February, March-ish.
Okay. So they've been in post-production.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness, because they had a huge cast. This would have been a terrible nightmare to try to record during COVID times. Because even, network TV or other TV shows, like especially medical shows, they got those masks on. They're following COVID protocols because, hey, it just works into what we're talking about. But even some law shows, like I was watching All Rise, I think it was, and they had glass things up in the court. They had people wearing masks in the office. So I'm like, they are working COVID into the story. So they couldn't have done this here at all. So
no, other than the outdoor scenes, but like all those dances, the ballrooms and
no, that's just too much. All those extras around dancing. No, too much.
We'll have to like film in Taiwan or New Zealand or something.
I mean, I guess I'm hearing most of these casts that are filming now, they're all like quarantining together, basically. Like they're all in little bubbles. Like you can't even leave.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. It sounds like they were together anyway, because I was watching this YouTube video and Phoebe Denevor, who plays Daphne, she was comparing being with this cast like being at summer camp. She said, they take piano lessons, they do this, they do that. Oh, these dance lessons, they're all like at camp doing activities. She said it felt like.
There was a little line in there about Daphne playing the piano and like composing a piece that I don't think was in the books at all. So I thought that was an interesting like little extra there.
Yeah. I like the piano parts. I enjoyed it.
I did too.
Yeah.
Speaking of the music, did you guys hear the songs? And did you recognize them?
I did recognize a few of them.
I knew about it from the buzz, but no, I couldn't tell because it's not my genre of music that they were adopting or adapting.
You mean you don't jam out to Billie Eilish?
I recognized the Billie Eilish one. I was like, oh, that's Bad Guy. I'm like, oh, wow, they changed it. And I recognized,
do know that song, but I totally didn't recognize it.
I recognized the Maroon 5 song, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I didn't know a couple of the others because I don't listen to like all of those artists, but I definitely called those two right away.
I might have to go listen to a soundtrack or something and see if I can hear it, because I just didn't. It just went by me while I was watching it. And
that's, again, props to Shondaland's team, because they are notorious for good soundtracks. They always are. Yep. And they pulled it off again, because no one's what crap is this playing? Like, they do it. They're notorious for adding really good music and covers. And
I mean, even back in the 90s when Grey's Anatomy was just getting going, they had a lot of like indie authors. She launched a lot of musicians' careers in that show.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, music makes it even more interesting. And then to have classical covers of those hits, it's like, wow, that still sounds good. So I love that stuff.
Yeah, this was quite the budget production. I mean, we've already talked about that, but even just having a full orchestra transcribe that music is not a budgetary.
No, and they paid for those songs. So I looked it up. Ariana Grande had a song. That song, "Thank You Next," and I guess I do remember it now that I hear it in my mind. Maroon 5 song, a Shawn Mendes song, Billie Eilish, Celeste, and Taylor Swift song. They paid good money for those artists. So those aren't cheap. So yeah, they had a budget. A good budget. Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Well, I don't. Back in the late 70s, it got to be fairly common for like rock bands to add an orchestral line to some of their songs, and a couple of them toured with full orchestras, and it just about broke them. Most of them, like Electric Light Orchestra, did that. Pink Floyd, I think. There were several that, but it was so expensive to travel, and anyway, that's kind of a little side note that I know a little bit about, but not enough to really talk about, I guess. Yeah. But I remember that happening, and the sound is amazing, right? It sounds incredible, but it's very expensive.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Like, seriously. Yeah. Wow. Because randomly, I was just watching The Mandalorian. So, all that stuff is with lots of musicians and composers and all of the things, spending all of the money. So I think about like big, dramatic, expensive ordeals when you have like those orchestras and string quartets and all these things playing. It's like, okay, wow. Money. Disney money, Shonda money, Netflix money. They just throwing the money, but
But it's got good impact. It's judicious. It's the right way to spend money, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, because honestly, I have a playlist. Actually, you guys, I'm going to make a playlist for this probably and put some of these songs on it on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, I'll have a link for my Spotify playlist, because I have also a Spotify playlist, especially for adaptation and movie soundtracks. So I have compiled a list of songs from different soundtracks that I've heard that I just love, and they stay in my head. So yeah, I'll link that too if you're curious. So
why not?
All the things. I mean, that's how I find music, honestly. Sometimes it's in movies, because I just don't listen to the radio. I don't just say, let me turn on the radio. I'm always listening to an audiobook or a podcast. So I miss new songs. So when I hear them like in new movies and things, I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm like, oh, that came out last year. It's new to me. So I'm always behind the loop on those things, behind the curve, I guess I'll say. But that's how I find music, is through TV and movies. So,
I mean, that's how I discovered Ed Sheeran, through the Hobbit song back in 2013, whatever. I heard him singing there. And then I texted my sister, I'm like, have you heard of Ed Sheeran? And she's like, Casey, where the fuck have you been?
In my library with the door shut.
Exactly. I was like, he's popular? And she's like, yeah, he's been popular for years now. And I'm like, oh shit.
I think Ed Sheeran might be like the Elton John for our generation, or your generation, not mine. But he's just kind of ubiquitous. He's very talented singer-songwriter. He knows how to write a pop song. He's young. I think he's going to be around, assuming he doesn't get in with the wrong crowd. He could potentially be around for a long time.
Hope so. Yeah.
And I like his stuff. Some of it's a little, anybody that has some adventure to their art is going to like throw out some things that not everybody likes, but I like a lot of his stuff. I think the first time I heard him was I think the song was called The A-Team, or at least that was part of the refrain. It was a very sad song, about someone sort of being addicted to crack and getting pulled under by it. But anyway, on that note, what were we talking about?
Songs in the Bridgerton.
Right.
So anyway, Lord.
I like Ed Sheeran. Moving on.
I guess, is there anything else? Because I'm looking at the time. We're probably coming up on an hour soon.
Yeah.
Should we just go ahead and rate the book and the TV show? And we will continue this conversation on the after show. So if you're not on Patreon, you should be. So not only can you see this exciting conversation firsthand, you get to hear what else we have to say, which we dive into some more little goodies that we found online that we are going to talk about. And those are not appropriate for public listening, but you can check it out over on Patreon. That's all I'm going to say about that. So let's rate the thing. Okay. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Money, mo. Okay.
I think I give the book a 4. I like Regency. I enjoyed it. I think Julia Quinn's writing gets better, and this is the first book of the series. It's not her first book. She wrote a few things earlier than this that are also sort of less developed and less complex. So I think this is not necessarily the best book she's ever written, but I did enjoy it. I did like it. The consent issue was not a deal breaker for me. So yeah. 4 for the book. I loved the show. I mean, I don't normally rate TV shows or series or whatever, but I binged this in 2 days, so I'd call that pretty high on the scale of good stuff.
Okay. Casey?
The book, I think I'm going to give the book 3 stars. I enjoyed it for the fluff that it was up until the marital rape, and then I was like, maybe not anymore. So yeah, I guess 3 stars, maybe 2. I'm kind of iffy between that. Like it was a decent book, not the best book I've ever read. I probably won't ever reread it. I may eventually read more in the series. I haven't decided yet. I don't know. I have way too many books I want to read in my life. So yeah, I guess I'll give it a 3 if I'm being nice. The show, I loved the show. There were still lots of issues with consent and pacing and other shit, but I'll get a solid 4 stars.
Okay. So for me, the book, on Goodreads, I gave it a 3, just because, you can't do halves on there. But if I could have done half, it probably would have been a 2.5.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it either. To anybody that reads like me, I would not recommend it. Let me clarify. If you read like me, then I don't recommend. But there was nothing too bad to turn me off. I kind of was meh about the marital rape issue. I was not loving that part, but you can't love everything in every book. That's why I try to remember. But yeah, it's definitely not my cup of tea per se. on a regular basis. But like I said earlier, I really enjoyed the series, the TV adaptation, after the second episode. So the first 2 episodes were a little slow for me, but in the third episode, things started moving and I was full in after that. And I watched it like in 2 days as well. So I liked it a lot. And I have like no problem watching historical stuff on TV versus reading. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have no problem with that. So I love the eye candy. I liked the sexy time scenes. I liked the pacing after the second episode. I liked the additions that they made that weren't in the book. Like I said, I'm sure they're in the other books, but I also said I will not be reading the other books, and I stand by that. So I'm going to rate the show 4 out of 5. It was very good. I feel like it could reach a 5 as these characters get more developed. And maybe as we see, maybe I might like another couple better than this couple, and it may push it up higher. Who knows? But right now I'm sitting at a 4. So 3 and 4. That's how I roll.
I think you bring out a good point, Tamara, that this is not a show where you should or must go and read the book first. For those of us who have loved the books, it's a fun thing to go back and refresh. But if you haven't read the books and you're not that into Regency fluff, you don't have to. You can still watch watch the show and enjoy the visuals and enjoy the storylines and enjoy the I almost want to call it a little bit of soap opera-ish way of threading the multiple series arcs or story arcs. And I don't think that most stuff that gets adapted, like I really feel compelled to go read the book first, like we did with the Deborah Harkness, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't have to do that with this.
Yes, and it's very rare where I will say the adaptation is better. But in my opinion, the adaptation is better. But I don't say that often, and I don't say it lightly.
No, I think this, it's something about sort of the realities of producing an ongoing series where you don't know exactly where it's going to end, right? The thing that makes this season 1 better than book 1 is the way they pull in all the potential for the future books and start weaving those story arcs together. I think that makes it way more interesting than the standalone book. But I also like a book that stands alone, and I don't feel like, oh shit, I just read this now. I won't feel happy until I've read 8 books. So I think that that's the thing that makes that. And we didn't talk a lot about in our episode today, but the colorization, the inclusivity that they've added to the storyline really adds a whole dimension to the show that was, not in this book or in almost any Regency romance that you could point to. Mm-hmm. So I think we're saving some of that to talk about in the after show.
Yeah, we are. But definitely you cannot expect, if you are familiar with Shonda Rhimes even a little bit, whatever she puts her hands on, it's going to be inclusive, period. So
I was really surprised when she picked up this IP. When I read the release years ago, I was like, that seems strange because it just didn't even occur to me that she was going to be able to incorporate that much racial diversity in a Regency series. Mm-hmm. Just like, wow, that's weird. She's going to pick up a white show.
Well, did you watch the other thing that she did? The other historical thing she did? It was called, what was it called? It had 1 season on ABC. It was canceled. I can't remember.
That Law and Order, something. It wasn't Law and Order, but it was like some kind of legal show, right?
No. It was about, oh my God, it was like a Romeo and Juliet type of show.
You're not talking about Gallivant, are you?
Gallivant? No.
That was a musical. I don't think she
No, it was not a musical. Now I'm stuck trying to figure it out. Oh my God. I'm going to figure it out later. And I'll be like, oh yeah, this was it. But if you guys know what I'm talking about. Oh, Star-Crossed. Still Star-Crossed. It was a historical drama, 1 season, 2017, and it was back in that time as well. It was a Capulet and Montague story. And there were Black actors all up and through there. And I was like, yes. So that's why I knew, like, that is what she does. That is like, she takes something that is not predictable for that type of setup, and she puts her own spin on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you ever come across Still Star-Crossed, it was good. I was disappointed it didn't get renewed. It was very good. And I love that the main heroine was a Black woman. I love that. And the other people, you know, I loved it. I was down for it. So I knew Shonda Rhimes had done this before with historical, and it worked out. I think it worked out. But, you know, I think ABC was scary. That's why she on Netflix. Netflix takes chances. Netflix, they are down for it. They're like, well, okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
So that is why she is where she needs to be. So she can do all the things and reimagine times for us, so we can have a good time. Yeah. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox. So check out Still Star-Crossed if you want to see another iteration of her doing historical fiction. Definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess are we done, ladies? Before we chatter on in the after show?
I think so.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks so much. If you're still listening right now, thank you so much for listening to the end of the episode. We appreciate you for being here, and we'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, take care, guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review, or like this episode on your favorite podcast player. It seems so simple, but it really helps me out. You can share this podcast with other book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. You can also join the Shelf Addiction Patreon family. For as little as $2 a month, you will help us produce even more awesome content for your ears. You can also consider joining the Shelf Addiction Official Facebook group, where we talk all things bookish and more in a safe space. The Shelf Addiction Podcast is a part of the Nerdy Maven Network. You can also reach us via email at info@shelfaddiction.com. Thank you for listening.